Cambridge and Oxford, when I see that you are straight and ready, I shall start you by saying, are you ready? Go! Get ready! Are you ready? Go!
Is it going to be the race we hope for? And the immediate impression is that Cambridge have gone off very fast indeed. And now the crew's beginning to converge, and this is where things could get very dicey indeed if they get any closer than this. Oxford are bound to try and push over a little bit, trying to force Cambridge out of the fast tide. And it's up to Henrietta Shaw to hold her place. Oxford, remember, this side have the advantage of the Middlesex bend as they come down beneath the Fulham wall now, and they're beginning to pass the boathouses, and the noise from the crowd is really tremendous. And Oxford are slightly up. As they pass the boathouses from which they emerge, it is in fact Cambridge who are slightly up, and they're up by about what, a canvas, slightly more than a canvas, Chris.
More, coming out to a quarter of a length. Both crews now looking for this fast rhythm, which is going to see them through the first third of the course. And both have settled into the same rate of striking, which means they're taking the same number of strokes a minute, 36 strokes a minute at the moment.
So Cambridge have achieved exactly what they were hoping to achieve from the off.
Absolutely. They must hold Oxford on this first bend so that they can then dominate round the first part of the Surrey bend, which starts at Harrods.
Two crews well over onto the Surrey side as they begin to approach Craven Cottage. The crews again very close. And Cambridge are up by just over a quarter of a length, coming up to almost half a length. Not too much separation between the blades of the two crews. This is what Chris Bailey was saying earlier about if they're this close, it becomes a very tough coxing job.
I think the umpire's had his flag up once already, but the crews now are really neck and neck as they come to the crown of this particular bend. This point will be very important for both crews. Both crews still striking the same at 35 strokes a minute. Oxford now are nosing in front, but they really ought to be a little bit further apart at this particular point of the race. Now they've got to go right away from Cambridge in the next half a minute, if they're going to have a chance when it comes up onto the Harrods bend. They're just about, well, half a canvas.
And all the predictions about the race being very close are being fulfilled at this point, with Oxford getting the advantage of their bend, but Cambridge, it seems to me, just pulling back a little bit each time. Only a canvas between them again. But if Oxford don't get clear water by the end of this bend, then the Surrey bend begins to take over, and then it's all in Cambridge's favour.
Oxford have got about half a length now, but they need all that and a bit more. They're getting very close together now. And this point of the race, that's not very easy for either crew, but as long as they stay on this course, they shouldn't actually clash. Nevertheless, Oxford have got to take at least another quarter of a length to stand a chance as they come up towards Harrods.
We should be getting the time from the mile.
Both crews still striking 34.5, and they're getting close together again.
And the time of the mile, 3:35 for Oxford, 3:36 for Cambridge. 1 second between them. Now let's go on ahead to Harrods. There we are, the Harrods depository. famous landmark in this race, just below Hammersmith Bridge. 1 second between them at the mile. Oh, and they are almost touching. The blades almost touching.
It did touch.
There may well have been a clash. Neither crew willing to give way, neither cox willing to give way, and again almost touching there. And they clashed again there, so there is clashing. Well, this is some of the most amazing stuff we've seen in the boat race for years here, Chris.
Absolutely, they're both pushing for this first part of the bend. The umpire's warning Oxford to push them out. This was a... Oxford pulling hard away towards the outside of the bend, pulling over towards Middlesex. Now, every time the cox puts the rudder on, it acts actually as a brake. He's now warning Cambridge. The umpire is indicating to Cambridge that they must move towards their stroke side, towards the Surrey bend. He's trying to pull the two crews apart, because once they get together, it's very difficult to get them disconnected.
So we've had several clashes of blades in this first mile and a half or so of this quite extraordinary race. And all the predictions are coming true. Close race, aggressive race. Neither of these cocks is willing to give way, but umpire Ronnie Hard has persuaded them that they must. And again, there's not much more than a canvas or so between them. 6 feet of canvas. Again, they're perilously close.
Well, this Hammersmith Bridge is going to be very important. They'll turn sharply as they come through the bridge. Cambridge trying to maximise their bend, push Oxford out towards the Middlesex side, over towards Chiswick, and they want to try and cut round and tuck underneath the Surrey bend. At this point, they're pulling up level as they start to take the fast part of their bend past the pier at Hammersmith.
So now at this stage of the race, the Surrey bend comes into operation, and theoretically now Cambridge should have the advantage. And this bend goes on for about 2 miles. And there you can see it. Vast bend, which turns right through 180 degrees.
Yeah. Yes.
You approach it travelling north, and you come out of it travelling south.
Cambridge has certainly been pushing on. They've lifted their rate to 36, and they're trying to take advantage of this first part of the Surrey bend. They're now settling out again, having pulled up with Oxford.
Well, we haven't had a race as close as this for a long, long time.
Not for a long time. Now, Oxford have got to stay with them now, as they've got to see their way around the first part of this Surrey bend and hold level with Cambridge along Chiswick. And
we may not get a time from Hammersmith Bridge, because I believe the timekeepers on their launch are now dropping a long way behind the race, and they're having difficulties seeing the flags drop at the timing point, so we may not get a time from Hammersmith Bridge. All we know is that it was very nearly similar time. Well, which way is this marvellous race going to pan out?
Oxford are holding on to the outside of this bend at the moment. They're very close together, though. The crews, they're interlocking again. The umpire winning Oxford. The umpire's pushing Oxford out. Oxford are trying to crowd Cambridge on the bend. Now they'll have to now pull out. They're very close in. The difficulty is that once they clash, it takes more than several strokes to get them apart again. The crews rowing stroke for stroke. Oxford still have an advantage of just a bare canvas. Now, if Oxford can hold this next 2 to 3 minutes, they then have the prospect of their own bend coming before them, which psychologically will boost them enormously. The question is whether they can actually maintain this intense pressure, because they have to row an extra length to a length and a half around the outside of the Surrey bend in order to stay with Cambridge. So at the moment they're making a tremendous effort.
Oxford!
Oxford getting another warning from the umpire. And Oxford are moving ahead, 3/4 of a length. And despite the fact that they're on the outside of the bend, they are pulling away, almost a length up. And now we move ahead of the race and look back, as Oxford must have made quite a spurt there.
I think Oxford rode with great determination to get round the outside of that bend. At the moment they have about 3/4 of a length, and they're within 2 minutes of the bend turning in their favour. And Cambridge have really got to make another big effort at this point to get back on terms, because very shortly the bend will turn against them. Oxford pulling out to nearly a length now. It's just under a length. Crews still rowing more or less stroke for stroke. Both crews still at 34 strokes a minute.
The problem now beginning to become one of great difficulty for Cambridge. But you can see they still have a lot of their bend to come. So this big Oxford effort has been made almost at the worst moment for them. So it's a great psychological uplift to have done that.
It's a great question now to know how much effort this has actually taken out of the Oxford crew. At the moment they seem to be pulling away stroke by stroke, but there is just another minute and a half of bend for the Cambridge crew, and then the river starts to pull away to Middlesex. At the moment it seems Oxford are spurting again, and they would appear to be clear. Cambridge have got to do something now if they're to save this race.
And Cambridge, in fact, as you can see for yourself now, have dropped well back.
It's a good
must be
length
2
and a half.
lengths. Even more.
Yes, nearly a length and 3/4, I think.
And now Oxford, of course, can take Cambridge's water as they please, as there's daylight between the boats. Water looked quite turbulent a little further back from there, but
yes,
it's beginning to calm again.
I think the water didn't pick up, but it was certainly no worse than it was from the previous Isis Goldie race. Both crews seemed to make little of it. They seem to have no problems with the water. But now Oxford are going well away. They're 2.5 lengths in front. Cambridge appear to have, at this stage at least, to have shot their bolt. Now, this was always the fear for Cambridge, which was that they were a fast-starting crew, but Oxford always showed to be a crew of great stamina, and indeed they're showing their stamina now. As they get further away, they're settling into their rhythm and rowing better forward every stroke.
And look at this coming up in front of Oxford. That's driftwood. But Cox, I think Cox has kept them safely away from it, and I don't think any of the blades touch that driftwood. That could have been a very nasty upset for them if they'd hit that.
Yes, there hasn't been an upset of that type for, well, I don't think ever. But potentially there is a real problem with wood in the river and the like.
So Oxford, good 2 lengths clear now. And with the Middlesex bend to come in their favour as they come towards the closing stages of the race. But what a race this has been.
Yes.
Memorable. Bowman Gavin Cartledge at 2. As we go down the boat is the president, Linton Richmond. Then number 3, the fair-haired Bruce Philp. There he is, the man who switched boats from Cambridge to Oxford. Looks as though he's going to get his win. 4 is Matthew Thomas. 5, Philip Hare. 6, the Australian, Graham Jones. 7 is Bill Lang. And the American stroke, who's done quite a job here. Francis Reininger, Fran Reininger, I think they know him as in the boat. And the American cox, Seth Lesser.
Now this Oxford crew really rowing well as they find themselves comfortably in the lead at this point. They rowed with great determination and experience. One of the advantages that this crew have had is that they have, well, by and large, they're two years per man older than Cambridge, and that makes a lot of difference when you've got to row another race of requiring great stamina and great determination. I think the stern of the Oxford boat have shown great determination in rowing the outside of that bend. It's certainly the first time that I can remember it happening in recent years, and all power to them. At this point, they're going further and further away. They seem to have a good 3.5 to 4 lengths now.
We go ahead and look back from Barnes Railway Bridge. They have to shoot that central arch. They must go through the centre span. And here come Oxford with perhaps 3 lengths advantage now. May sound a lot, but sure Chris would agree with me that when you've rowed 4.25 miles on this sort of water, 3-4 lengths really isn't anything at all.
It's not a great deal. Any verdict to around 10 seconds, which is the sort of 3-length mark, it represents less than a 1% difference between the crews. And to take 16 men and train them up and hope to get within 1% is actually quite remarkable in itself.
Shot Barnes Bridge, and barring absolute disaster, They're now on their way to their 10th successive victory in the boat race.
I think the gap at the Barnes Bridge was about 10 seconds, so they're about on the 1% margin at the moment. It's somewhere around 3 lengths.
The times for the various points not coming through from the official timegivers. I think they've got some problems in that armada that follows the two crews. We have got a time now at Barnes Bridge. Oxford 14:12 and Cambridge 14:23. That's not a bad time, actually. That's they're going pretty fast. I mean, the time there, the Oxford time at Barnes Bridge last year was 13:57 in exceptional conditions. Right. And they're only 15 seconds outside that now.
These are two very good crews. You know, by the standards of recent years, when Oxford has produced exceptional crews, these two are well up to it. You know, it's only now where Cambridge realised that they're within 2 to 3 minutes of home and some way down that it must become becoming harder and more dispiriting for them. You know, the crew in front has everything to look forward to, and they can row and think about each stroke one at a time. They've got over the hard part of the race, and they showed, as I say, great character in doing so. You know, Oxford, I think, could have pulled away and will continue to pull away now towards the finish.
And now we look back from the finish. And Oxford are going to mark up their record number of successive wins. They've never achieved 10 before, but now they're only a minute or two away from doing that. But what a race. Absolutely fulfilled predictions of a good, tight race. Well past Hammersmith Bridge, these two crews were locked together. We had the excitement of the clashing blades early on. There was fierce and vigorous coxing going on. And the umpire was called into action, I think, more often than I can ever remember.
Yes, I think we certainly heard from the umpire at least 3 times. It may even have been more. But you know, there was always that danger. And the umpire told me that in the practice rates for coxes there was a considerable amount of difference of opinion between the coxes as to where they should be. Now they're building up for the finish here. Oxford rowing well, coming in towards the finish. Tremendous euphoria about to overtake them.
So Oxford now approaching the finishing post to mark up this historic 10th successive win. There it is. Oxford crossed the line. The winners again, 10 in a row. But what a race it's been. And no disgrace for Cambridge. An unofficial time we have for it is 17 minutes and 10 seconds. And that is pretty fast rowing. Cambridge crossed the line. They'll be totally dispirited. But really, the opening stages of this race were memorable. And no disgrace for Cambridge. They put their utmost into it. They had the right, they won the toss, they had the right station for them, and still Oxford got on top of them on the outside of the bend, which says something, I think, for the quality of the Oxford.
I think it says a great deal. They showed great resource and character in rowing around the outside of that bend. You know, Cambridge did all they could possibly do, which was to struggle and fight for their bend. In the end, the Oxford crew just proved to be that much stronger in every sense, I think, both physically and mentally, because it required a great deal of determination to take on Cambridge on their own bend, which is exactly what Oxford did.
So we've had one of the memorable boat races today. And as usual, in the losing boat, utter dejection. And they must go away, Cambridge, try again. But, remember, in between the wars, Cambridge had 13 wins in a row. And Oxford is still some way from that.